Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Thanks so much for joining us again. We're just going to pause for 20 seconds or so. We've got a very large number of people who've registered for today. I think over 800. So we'll just give people another few seconds, 20 seconds or so, and I'll come back and we'll kick it off. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are across North America or around the world. Welcome into our count them, sixth annual year in review and the year ahead. Our annual distillation of the latest trends that are reshaping travel and tourism with our very good friends at Focusrite. They're a global leader in travel and tourism research and analysis. And this year we've got our wonderful colleague at Arrival, Douglas Quimby, joining us, and Douglas and the Arrival team focus on the tours, experience and activity spaces and the unique sort of characteristics and trends in that market. So we've got an all-star team today, as you can see, and I'm delighted to be joined by my good friend and colleague, Elena Prestova. She and I are going to add some commentary, some examples that will hopefully give some sort of practical meaning and actionable next steps to these trends. And I've already introduced Douglas Quimby, co-founder and CEO of Arrival. And then I'll just pass over to Pete. Pete Como is Managing Director of Focusrite. Pete, do you want to introduce your two team members?
Yes, of course. Thanks, Chris, for having us. Always excited to do this webinar. So today you'll be hearing from myself, Pete Como, Managing Director of Focusrite. We also have Madeline List, who's our Senior Analyst, as well as Carolina Sastero, who is our Market Specialist for Latin America. So we're excited to cover trends, markets, and segments here today.
Thanks so much, Pete. And just a reminder, all of the slides and a truly amazing range of research, resources, and analysis are going to be shared with you out via email to everyone who registered. Plus, we'll be adding to the landing page on a special landing page. You can see the URL there, which will include all of those. And that will include both access to free research from both Arrival and Focusrite, as well as a range of other links and resources for the examples we're sharing today. Plus, of course, all the slides and a recording of today as well, if you want to share it with colleagues who were unable to join us. So thank you so much for being part of our sixth annual event. We're going to cover trends in four major areas today. There's actually a whole series of sub-trends within each of them, starting with travel tech and marketing trends to watch. That's a sort of quick fire round that Pete's going to take us through of what's real, what's meaningful in the technology and marketing space. Then we're going to hear from Madeline in terms of the pretty amazing evolution of how accommodation is being changed by phenomena such as remote work. We're going to look at the international travel recovery with Carolina. Obviously, international travel hasn't fully recovered, but what are the trends and the prospects, both short and longer term? And then Douglas is going to take us through some profound generational shifts in how travelers are thinking about tours, activities, and experiences, and some really important insights for destinations to think about. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to pass over to you, Pete, to kick off the first of our trends today. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Chris. So to get us started, we would like to share some of the overarching technology and marketing trends to watch in the coming year before we dig into international market recovery and industry segments. We thought it would be useful to look back a bit at the tech and marketing trends we shared last year and determine the relevancy for this year and into the future. Last year, a big focus was on technology to help solve travelers' COVID concerns. This year, it's more about which aspects of the technology that was developed to solve COVID challenges has staying power, such as frictionless and seamless travel. We also were talking a lot about ancillary sales last year. Actually, for the past few years, this has been repositioned to some degree to a trend of unbundling and bundling of services. And lastly, fintech was a topic last year and has become an even bigger trend this year. As we think about the big trends that manifested themselves this year, we will also cover attribute-based selling, how subscriptions are evolving, and close our trend segment with a bit on the evolution of inspiration and shopping. So let's jump right in. Fintech services can help add additional value to the travel brand and provide differentiated services from the competition. The bottom line is that today's consumer wants more flexibility and simpler processes for their travel planning, booking, and experiencing. Increasingly, more companies are pushing the entire industry to embrace this fintech revolution. As the customer becomes accustomed to greater flexibility and more seamless travel experiences, the entire industry will need to embrace fintech solutions just to remain competitive. The broad category of fintech describes any software application that involves financial services such as payments, loans, settlement, and insurance. Within the travel industry, fintech generally concerns applications that reduce processing costs, provide traveler flexibility, or minimize friction during travel. The latest fintech solutions can estimate whether prices will go up and allow a traveler to lock in a low price for a period of time, simplify the process of making payments, and finally provide flexibility and insure against trip disruptions and poor service experiences. Companies such as Hopper and Trip Actions are tackling solutions around pricing flexibility and payment expense reimbursement, respectively. They are also helping to usher fintech solutions into the future. Trip Actions is focused on corporate travel and is using technology to help streamline the process of expense reimbursement for business travelers. And Hopper is building a business around offering different services to reduce the anxiety of booking and experiencing travel. They're helping travelers understand whether prices will increase or decrease in the future. They allow travelers to lock in prices, and they are offering cancel for any reason insurance even after the guest checks into a hotel if they are not satisfied with the property or the experience. And we expect that this type of flexibility will continue to broaden to other categories as Hopper and others in this space expand their services and others in the market start to copy some of the same services. Chris, do you want to jump in now and share a bit, or do you want me to finish going through the trends?
If we just wrap up your trends and then I'll talk about some practical examples.
Okay, sounds good. So attribute-based selling, or ABS, is a trend that has really accelerated recently. The dream of every modern hotel is to sell an experience that goes beyond a simple overnight stay in a room. Their objective is to make the hotel the foundational component to any trip, serving as a home base that empowers the guest to have successful trips and create indelible memories. Distinct attribute combinations that may be of interest to an individual are identified for each traveler. Ideally, ABS not only helps better match an offer to a traveler's specific need, but also allows hoteliers to assess a premium for the attributes that create the greatest customer value. Since the emergence of the ABS concept, large tech providers like Amadeus, Ideas, and Shiji have introduced some ABS-ready features into their products. At its core, ABS is a combination of merchandising methods and revenue management practices that unbundle the hotel product. Widespread industry adoption will require legacy technology enhancements and extending to intermediary distribution channels. There are also some challenges for hoteliers in adopting ABS. The first is evolving beyond how inventory is historically controlled and priced. And also there's a lot of complexity in developing strategies that maximize sales, margin, and limit inefficiencies related to aligning inventory access with changing demand patterns. As noted, there's a number of big industry tech providers who are offering ABS as part of their product set. There's also startups who are offering ABS as their core product. Galvendi is a young company who presented their ABS solution on the stage at the Focusrite conference last month. They're helping hoteliers unbundle their product offering to provide a more personalized option and value to travelers. So as you can see in the hotel room, all of the different attributes can be unbundled and assigned a price based on value. I'm not so sure about myself paying extra for a west-facing room, but I would definitely pay a extra $12 for a quiet room. Compared to 2021, the global subscription e-commerce market is forecast by the business research company to increase by over 64% by year-end 2022. In addition to convenience, other benefits cited for online shopping, which buoys subscription services, include reduced reliance on stay visits, lowered cost of traveling to stores, the absence of crowds, and a satisfying customer experience. So why not travel too? Demand for subscription services exists across all age groups, but younger customers who have grown up with and have become accustomed to subscription services sign up more readily. According to PaySafe, US consumers lead the way with a mean of 2.5 retail subscription services per household. Other countries with active participation in subscription services include Canada, Germany, the UK, and Austria. In the travel category, subscriptions offerings generally fall into two types: access, which could be access to exclusive places, services, upgrades, and amenities, and membership, which usually involves discounted benefits, content, or specific assistance. Some examples of travel companies offering subscriptions are eDreams, which is a European flight-based OTA who has over 3 million Prime members who save on airline tickets. Frontier Airlines, which is a domestic low-cost carrier here in the States, who's now offering all-you-can-fly passes for $799 US per year. TripAdvisor, who offers a Plus subscription, which includes discounted hotels. And lastly, Inspirato, who offers a monthly subscription to their luxury accommodations. Finally, the last trend that we would like to cover relating to technology and marketing is the evolution of shopping and inspiration. During our family trip this past summer to Italy, I asked my 14-year-old daughter to find us a pizzeria in Naples for lunch on our way from Pompeii to Rome. She immediately pulled up TikTok and identified a place, and then she shifted to Instagram to check out the vibe. So personally, I took her recommendation, jumped over to Google Maps to check out the reviews and also get directions. But the point is that younger generations are not using the same channels to get information and be inspired. Visual and social search is often all they know. And it's critical that brands across the travel ecosystem evolve the way they communicate and inspire these future travelers. We recently asked US travelers which social media sources they use to help make decisions. The biggest destination decisions, rather, the biggest finding is that the use of social media for inspiration and information on trip elements is highly dependent on age. Younger travelers are far more likely to use these sources to help with any travel decision, not just destination choice. The same patterns are evident for choices on transportation, lodging, and in-destination activities as well. Look at Instagram, where 18 to 34-year-old bracket are twice as likely to use Instagram compared to 35 to 54-year-olds. And TikTok is 2.5 times. Interestingly enough, Facebook is used equally, at least for those 54 and younger. And it'll be interesting to see how adoption rates of Instagram, Snap, and TikTok evolve among Gen Xers. And lastly, if we look at in-destination activities, which we're going to talk about towards the end of this webinar, more and more travelers are using online and social sources. Many of the online sources outside of general search and TripAdvisor were far less common among 55+ travelers. Younger travelers are better aware of specific sites they can use to get information on destination-based activities. It is clear that there is a shift going on towards visual and social search, so destinations and brands that can embrace this trends will be better set up to win the traveler of the not so distant future. Chris?
Thank you so much, Pete. Just a few practical examples and things to think about. We call these examples in action. The whole fintech revolution is really interesting. And if you're a destination or a travel business, knowing some of these new technologies and how they create greater flexibility in terms of packaging and promoting different types of products or sub-products within, say, your accommodation sector, or a very practical example is public transport and the opportunity to implement fintech where either with a credit card or a digital wallet on a smartphone, you can eliminate all that confusion that, for example, visitors might have about how to buy a fare, what the fare cost is, and you can just basically tap on and off public transport. It's widely used in international cities, and a number in North America, such as New York City, have implemented this. So obviously, it's a great thing for sustainability. Removing some of those barriers for use of public transport, hugely important. But fintech, something to keep an eye on and think about how you can implement innovative marketing elements into the programs and campaigns. We talked about content, particularly the sort of rise of visual content, particularly for younger travelers. So TikTok, for example, we just heard that from Pete, that he chose that pizzeria in Italy based on food. And this is just a quick example of exactly how people are using TikTok.
To hurry into this unforgettable burger joint in Buffalo, New York. Mr. Sizzle's menu has options for literally anyone. At their full bar, you'll find a collection of boozy milkshakes and floats, mixed drinks, and other seasonal must-tries.
So obviously, whether it's TikTok or other channels, short format video, hugely important in building your own capacity, but most importantly, empowering others is a very important part of your content creation and curation strategy. So working with your industry, visitors, but perhaps most importantly of all, locals, that they're creating and surfacing short format video content through channels such as TikTok. And we've just seen the importance and impact in the restaurant and cafe bar space. So think about your strategy in this and think about curation. Now, we've created a huge range of resources in this space. So our TikTok content head, Hayden, has pulled together over the last couple of years some great examples and how-to guides on TikTok, whether you're just putting your toe in the water or whether you're quite advanced in terms of your TikTok strategy. And we're actually undertaking a major cooperative research study with our friends at Destination Analysts on compelling content that really is moving the needle, and what is moving the needle in terms of destination selection and activity and tour selection. So a whole range of resources right there, and we'll be sharing that out, of course, via email. Subscriptions, I just wanted to highlight and build on what Pete talked about. So obviously, whether it's in the airline space, Alaska Airlines is another example of this. They've got a flight pass product like Frontier. There's an increasing number. Whether it's in the luxury space, we saw Inspirato, and this provides access, for example, to high-end short-term rentals. Or Travel and Leisure is, of course, a storied magazine publisher that was purchased by Wyndham to get access to those subscribers. And they're thinking about it in the same way that arguably a destination marketing or management organization should think about it. How do you build your media assets, such as a magazine or an email, as a compelling touch point to build that loyalty and repeat visitation, and focusing on the ability to use those assets to create a long-term customer relationship? And that's the true value, of course, not the media asset itself. So just about every DMO has got, whether it's email or it's a print guide, that they're running some sort of subscription model, and thinking about your media assets in the context of loyalty and building and long-term enduring relationship that can prompt people to come back repeatedly to a destination, which of course is a tremendously valuable part of how we interact. And of course, consider other things such as remote work or perhaps study opportunities, purchasing a second home. So those are a couple of quick examples. Let's move on to our next trend today. And that's in the context of accommodations and the evolution there. I'm going to pass over to Madeline from Focusrite. Take it away, Madeline.
Thank you, Chris. So we're going to go through a couple of the trends that we have seen in our consumer research here at Focusrite in relation to accommodations, both talking about categories of accommodations and some interesting phenomena happening over there, as well as the interplay of accommodations with remote work trends. So when it comes to speaking about the health or doing a status update on things in the accommodations industry, there are a few different metrics that we often use to talk about this. I'm presenting an important one called incidence for the US that we look at. And incidence is the percentage of the whole traveling population who's using any given category of lodging. So here what I put on the screen is the last 3 full calendar years of incidence for hotels versus short-term rentals. And first, I'm going to say that you'll notice that when I speak about the push and pull between these two categories, one thing I won't mention is anything existential or any existential threats to the short-term rental industry. We're at a point where we do feel very confident this is here to stay in terms of what size it will be and how it will grow and develop. Some things do yet remain to be seen, but we're not concerned that short-term rentals are going away right now. However, when we look at the past few years of trends and how travelers have been using the two categories, there are some big differences in how they fared through the pandemic. You'll see hotels kind of had this V-shaped pattern in terms of incidence. We had about 65% of US travelers who used a hotel back in 2019. That fell pretty dramatically in 2020, about 10 percentage points, and then bounced back up in 2021. Again, to the mid-60 percentile range. However, short-term rentals are following their own pattern here. Those actually are more stable, but they're inching downward slowly. And while the percentage of travelers who are using short-term rentals isn't falling dramatically, when we see changes that are consistent and trending down, it is something that we want to flag. A lot of this is connected to the affordability of short-term rentals, so people are very much still booking them, and the people who are booking are paying a lot, but it's a smaller percentage of travelers overall who are going and booking those short-term rentals in 2021 than we saw earlier. Now, sometimes I also hear people talk about short-term rental users as if they're this very distinct category of lodging users, as if they're cut from a different cloth. Something really important to keep in mind is that people who use short-term rentals tend to be hybrid users who are open to a lot of different types of accommodations. Even throughout the pandemic, they had pretty consistent rates of comparing both hotels and short-term rentals in their shopping processes. So this is really anyone's game for who is going to continue to capture these customers during shopping. They're still looking at different options and different prices. The right marketing, the right offers can get people to go either way when it comes to their lodging. In terms of what they're really enthusiastic about with that short-term rental category, the things that really continue to emerge in our research is the character, the feeling of being more immersed in the neighborhoods and the destination, having access to privacy, a more personalized experience, and it can also feel like the home-like amenities offer a lot of comfort and value for the money. However, with a lot of increased usage of short-term rentals, people staying in them more often and also paying more over the last few years, things have fallen under some criticism and more scrutiny has been put on the sector, especially when it comes to Airbnb with fees for cleaning, with affordability and cost issues, and also with some policies that hosts have that don't feel very guest-centric. Airbnb as a company has voiced that they really want to try to combat this. They've taken a lot of extra steps to increase price transparency for consumers in their search and shopping processes, and also say that they want to try and highlight the category as a more affordable alternative to hotels, the way it used to be when Airbnb originally came out. And there are a couple different ways that hotel brands have responded to the growing power of that short-term rental sector and the different changes in short-term rental trends. One that we see here is this kind of cheeky campaign that came out this year from Hilton, where they were kind of poking fun and highlighting issues that a lot of short-term rentals have, especially ones that are not professionally managed and run by mom and pops, issues with reliability, issues with overbearing hosts. But then there's another strategy that we also see coming forward from hotel brands wanting to address that short-term rental demand, and that is to lean further into it. So you also see brands like Marriott that are actually expanding inventory and expanding their lines of business in order to be able to offer short-term rental accommodations. So a couple different strategies you see those hotel brands taking, but they are addressing it, and that interplay and competitiveness between the two categories is something that's going to keep going on. Now, I've also worked very closely here at Focusrite on research about digital nomadism and blended travel, and this is something that's really here to stay. So I want to highlight some really cool things that we see from our research there. The first thing I want to mention is, like I said, not just a COVID fad. This was remote work and digital nomadism were things that were actually happening and growing in strength before the pandemic. The pandemic was a big catalyst for getting more people to do this, but it's certainly not a temporary COVID phenomenon. 55% of travelers we surveyed in our consumer travel report said they took a leisure trip where they or someone in the party worked remotely. And that's even more people when you look at those segments that are 18 to 34 or 35 to 54. And as well, the travelers who were 18 to 34 were the most likely to extend a business trip for leisure purposes. When it comes to the type of lodging that people prefer when they're on any sort of trip that combines work and travel, you see the biggest competitors that I was talking about before pop up there as the most popular. Short-term rentals were actually the most popular among nomads and blended travelers who we surveyed here at Focusrite. But you can see how sharp the cutoff is between those first two categories of short-term rentals and hotels and the other most popular paid accommodations. And so that competitiveness for that remote traveler and that blended traveler are going to continue to play out between the two categories. I also want to speak about some of the things in lodging that blended travelers or remote workers or nomads are looking for. And it's important to consider that these types of things aren't just important to have in the property, they're important to feature in marketing, and they're important to feature prominently in listings. People need to know in the shopping process that they're there. Things like strong Wi-Fi and strong cell reception are obviously critical to getting work done efficiently. Reviews from other remote workers are important because people want to understand that others have used the property for a similar purpose and had success. Desk space, table space, secluded areas to take calls, also very key for productivity. And while the majority of travelers who combine work and travel are going to do at least some work from their accommodations, the longer people are traveling, the more likely they are to seek external workspaces as well. Think co-working spaces, cafes, libraries. So if you're in a destination that has noticed that you have a lot of long-term travelers who are doing digital nomadism or blended travel, important to consider that the longer people stay, the more they want to know, not just about accommodations that are good for remote work, but also about spaces in the area they're staying that are remote work friendly as well.
Thank you, Madeline. And your evaluation of push and pull between short-term rentals and hotel brands is definitely fascinating. And we will share with you a couple of examples from both sides of the spectrum. As it was just highlighted by Madeline in the data that she shared, the short-term rental segment was supercharged by the pandemic in terms of awareness and usage by the travelers. And directly related, the growth in remote or hybrid work has equally boosted evolution of the accommodation sector. So the trend of hybrid or remote work is certainly here to stay, at least in 2023 and likely far beyond that. And according to the Longwoods International Traveler Sentiment Research, roughly half of US travelers plan to work remotely for at least 2 weeks in 2023. So this definitely sets the new expectations from the hotels to provide comfortable co-working spaces. And Ennismore is one of the leading hospitality brands that has embraced this change very early in the game. So they offer 21 hotels and the number is growing. And their focus is on designing the workspaces of the future with all the comforts of the home, with the emphasis on the tangible as well as non-tangible design choices such as sounds and scents, which provides really interesting opportunities for destination marketing organizations to educate the accommodation sector and partners about the trends and what might be appealing and interesting for the business travelers beyond the obvious. So another brand we'd like to highlight is IWG, which you might know as formerly known as Regis, which claims to have invented the hybrid workspace concept and offers 4 co-working franchise concepts under its umbrella to match every kind of business, work style, and price point needs, which is a nice combination of this hybrid workspace as well as the subscription model that Pete was talking about earlier. So their global scale is truly impressive with over 3,500 locations offering access to private offices in the most convenient locations. And their other concept spaces, that product is unique in its attempt to cultivate a sense of community. So it's definitely lots of different offerings for different types of business travelers. So one of the more recent developments with IWG is focusing on the airport environments, opening new co-working and meeting spaces and lounges featuring fully equipped work areas, and those can be experienced around the world. I think most closest to us would be the one in Los Angeles. I don't know, they're actively adding new product. So this combination of blended hybrid or remote workforce has also given a new meaning to the business travel, which now is being utilized by many companies as the way to bring their teams together, to strengthen the relationships and to create connections between the employees, which might be hard to develop, especially with new employees that are joining the company in remote capacity. And we see brands such as Outside catering to this new audience, developing, in their case, outdoors experiences that a business group can share. So to highlight our third trend of the webinar, I'd like to pass it to Carolina to talk about international travel recovery.
Thank you, Elena. So I'll share with you some insights on international market trends with spotlights in Latin America and Asia. There is good reason for optimism regarding the future of Latin America's travel market as the COVID pandemic eases and new political leaders try to improve financial stability and income equality in the region. Strong domestic demand actually helped steady the travel market during the pandemic. Brazil serves as a primary example where residents rediscovered their homeland's natural parks and scenic beaches when international borders were closed. On the other hand, Mexico had few, if any, restrictions on foreign visitors, which lessened the impact of the pandemic on its tourism industry. Domestic tourism will continue to drive travel market growth as Latin Americans take advantage on currency conversion rates favoring local exchanges, and elevated airfares keep some foreigners away. Recovery to pre-pandemic levels is projected to occur in 2023. Still, the region's systemic economic problems will not be easily overcome. After losing more than half of its value in 2020, the Latin America travel market rose a healthy 51% to 35.2 billion in 2021. Revenue is projected to increase 37% in 2022 and rebound to pre-pandemic levels in 2023. Online gross bookings climbed 58% to 16.1 billion in 2021, as consumer adoption of digital tools accelerated during the COVID pandemic. In 2022, online revenue is expected to surpass pre-pandemic levels, reaching 22.5 billion. OTAs will continue to represent more than half of all travel online revenue, although supplier direct online market share will grow. Mobile will become a key online growth driver for travel suppliers. And the hotel market is Latin America's largest travel segment, accounting for half of all revenue in 2021. Hotel gross bookings soared 56% to 17.6 billion for the year, with room occupancy and average daily rates reaching record high levels in key leisure destinations. Moving on to Asia, after plummeting 69% in 2020, India's travel market is well on its way to recovery. Travel gross bookings grew by 91% in 2021, as the sector bounced back from the pandemic-induced downturn. The strong upward trajectory illustrates that a robust rebound is underway. With the return of travel and industry more generally, the India market is anticipated to return to pre-pandemic levels also in 2023, far earlier than most markets, in particular those located in Asia. The nation's economic fundamentals have remained solid, and data suggests that broader economic activities have returned to pre-pandemic levels. This will help the country achieve a real GDP expansion of 9.2% in 21-22, after contracting 7.3% in 2021. India's total travel market grew to 19.1 billion in 2021 from 10 billion in 2020. While this growth came on the back of a significantly diminished base, the strong upward trajectory illustrates a good recovery after the pandemic-induced losses. All Indian travel supplier segments, airline, rail, hotel, and car rentals, accelerated as Indians began to satiate their pent-up desire for travel in 2021. India is in the middle of an unprecedented infrastructure augmentation exercise. The country is spending 1.4 trillion besides planning a suggested investment of 750 billion for railways for 2018 to 2030. This massive undertaking will create new opportunities for channels across the board to expand their footprints and increase revenue. As a result, the rail, air, and hotel segments are all likely to witness quantum gains as a variety of large-scale projects are completed. Southeast Asia represents another emerging set of markets that was poised to break out in 2019, yet the pandemic had a much more severe hit compared with India. Prior to the pandemic, the travel sector was rapidly growing in Southeast Asia, serving as a key part of the economy. After plummeting by nearly 72% in 2020 and another 42% in 2021, 2022 is anticipated to boast a relevant recovery. While strict lockdowns curtailed leisure travel throughout the pandemic, the reopening has proved promising for the region. With promotion of domestic travel and digital trends, the future of Southeast Asia travel appears to offer many new opportunities. Nevertheless, further recovery will be incremental, with gross bookings just shy of 2019 totals as we project out to 2025. Oops, I'm sorry. Having shaken off the remnants of the 2008 global financial crisis, Southeast Asia was enjoying a period of sustained economic expansion. Rapid urbanization and digitization, allied with surging inbound investments and expanding middle classes, delivered exciting new momentum to consumer and travel spending. However, prioritizing the growth of inbound leisure travel resulted in persistent neglect of domestic tourism investment. As a result, each country in the region was underprepared for a prolonged shutdown of international travel. In Singapore's case, its city-state size meant that it did not have a strong domestic travel sector on which to fall back. So we're seeing different trajectories worldwide, but overall, tourism is showing a very positive sign of recovery, and domestic travel will still play an important role in the upcoming year.
Thanks so much. So just a couple of quick insights around this. And I just want to step back in terms of international travel and just really comment on the really historic and unprecedented drivers that are creating a demand for international travel. And that is this historic expansion of the world's middle class and wealthier communities. You can see the numbers there are almost quadrupling in the last 20 or so years, and many of those are in places such as India, which we heard about, but also like Indonesia, the world's fourth most populous country, now has over 55 million people who are able to aspire and think about international travel. And Latin America, over 250 million people now in places such as Mexico, Brazil, Chile, for example, or a remarkably smaller country like Uruguay, now travel regularly in terms of international travel. And so that's a long-term trend, and that's going to provide a profound driver to the expansion of international travel. The other area I just wanted to comment quickly on is digital. And during the lockdown, McKinsey came out with a number of really remarkable thought leadership pieces. One of the areas they identified was the issues and challenges that we can address in the international travel space, in terms of the lack of connectivity, particularly for smaller businesses who traditionally haven't worked with travel trade partners, may not be connected into their major platforms. So the opportunity to create technology solutions. So if you have a look around the world, a number of countries, starting with Australia about 15 years ago, have invested in technology in this space. Tourism Exchange Australia connects even very small tour and activity suppliers, B&Bs, into booking systems, and then out to the online travel agencies and the traditional travel trade partners and wholesalers. A number of other countries have launched national tourism exchanges to create this. Full declaration, Miles is a partner in Tourism Exchange USA, bringing these same technology solutions to the United States and allowing particularly smaller businesses who traditionally haven't been well connected internationally into a very simple, very low-cost solution in terms of building connectivity and distribution and really tackling that barrier that McKinsey highlighted. So without further ado, we're going to jump into our final session. We've only got 15 or 16 minutes, Douglas, so I know you're going to cover off some really compelling information. Over to you, mate.
Great, super. Well, thanks so much, Chris, and thanks, everyone. I'm going to try to be as compelling as I absolutely can. And we're going to spend this last few minutes just talking about the world of experiences. So this is tours, activities, attractions, events, basically everything that travelers do when they get there. So if you're a destination or a property, it's when they're arriving at the destination and thinking about what they want to do. And there's some pretty important shifts that are underway. And I want to start first by looking at, we're just thinking about the path to purchase. So, and I imagine, so all of you who are on the call, experienced travel industry professionals and marketers from an array across the industry, and you probably are pretty familiar with the broad path to purchase. I mean, this is something that's been so well researched and documented by the likes of Focusrite and Miles over the years. And we have a really good sense, right, of how broadly travelers go from discovery or fantasy all the way through to the experience of the trip itself, right? So once that destination decision is made, then you start thinking about, transportation and costs and getting there, and then where do you want to stay? And then we always or typically see, it's towards the end, kind of close into departure, or even in destination itself, where travelers start to really think about, plan, and make those decisions around the things to do, the tours, the day tours and experiences, and so forth. And we see this kind of manifested across our industry in so many ways, just in how we think about broadly kind of marketing and messaging, and even in how many online platforms and businesses are set up and how they push content or design their sites in such a way. And this is a kind of a path to purchase or a method that's, I think, well modeled and very well understood. And I think a lot of us base our assumptions, our strategies on this core kind of understood path to purchase. And we see it pretty clearly. So in some recent work that Arrival partnered with Focusrite to undertake to really understand, okay, in 2022 and beyond, what's happening in the world of tours and activities and experiences, how has it evolved since the pandemic? It was one of the most impacted sectors, as you might imagine. So one of the things we just looked at is, okay, when do travelers purchase those activities and tours? Here we're just looking at US travelers as one set, and we're just looking at that older traveler segment, so 55 and up. And you can see this really lines up with our historical, that understanding of the path to purchase. They're predominantly booking those tours, those day tours and experiences after they've got the flights and hotels sorted out, or even when they're in the destination itself. Now, one of the things that we've seen, though, is that there's a bit of a shift. Actually, it's a pretty significant shift, especially when we look at younger travelers. So let's just take a moment to look at this. We came upon this when we wanted to understand, okay, what is happening around the path to purchase specifically for tours and activities. We wanted to help the experiences industry, online sellers, destinations, and a lot of the tour and activity and attraction operators understand, okay, how are travelers purchasing these things? When are they making the decisions? On what channels are they using? When are they doing it too? This is one of the big challenges in this industry because so many of these decisions are made last minute. So as we dug into this, we also had a hypothesis, which I think is probably, I think it's also just basic, common sense, but it was a hypothesis that the timing or the booking window of a particular tour or experience is highly correlated to just how important that particular experience is to the overall kind of trip and to the traveler themselves. And so we did some pretty careful analysis and built indices for both the booking window as well as the perceived importance of that particular activity or tour to the traveler. And it was pretty amazing, actually, just how tightly correlated that those two factors are, right? So those experiences, those activities that are really important to the traveler, They often can be even a trip driver. That's the reason, for example, I want to take my family to Disney World for that big family vacation. I'm absolutely going to make sure I've got the park kind of experience component booked well in advance. Or if I follow a particular band or a sports team, I want to make sure I've got my World Cup tickets or whatever it may be. And then I'm going to organize, right, the rest of my travel. But then we see other experiences, like, for example, a day tour, or maybe a museum where there's a bit more availability, less supply constraint. And it's something where, okay, I've got a few extra hours this afternoon, maybe we'll pop into the museum that is just down the street. So all of this makes, I think, a lot of sense. But we then discovered something pretty interesting when we looked at this data around when travelers were telling us broadly that they were booking their tours and experiences. And so this is that same view I showed a bit earlier of the older traveler set, the 55 and up, mostly some Gen X, boomers, and seniors, and how they're booking their experiences. But then we looked at it for the other traveler segments, and you see a pretty remarkable difference. Frankly, when we saw this, I kind of did a bit of a double take and really had to look closely. But the shift is remarkable, especially for, I think of this as the kind of Gen Z and younger millennial, often but just before they're having kids. And you can see that upwards of 70% are saying they're booking their experiences before any other component, or they're booking them around the same time. That's a really profound shift. So what does that mean? I think it's really, when I think about this in relation to that correlation between the booking window and importance, to me, that's a pretty compelling, a pretty powerful indicator that, especially for this rising generation of travelers, increasingly it's that experience, the thing that they're going to do that is more important in that overall trip planning process or hierarchy. They're thinking about it well in advance. It's much more central to travel planning and even the destination decision. So what does that mean for all of you, let's say operationally, in terms of your marketing and strategy? So here was something actually in a conversation I had recently with a leading tour company who just made this comment in a discussion, which is, well, the tour happens to be in Costa Rica. So increasingly, we're seeing travelers seeking out a particular experience, a theme. It's something that they want to do, perhaps with a like-minded group of people, or it's around a particular passion or interest that they have. And they're going to seek those out first, as opposed to necessarily saying, oh, I want to go here, or I want to go over here. So it's a little bit less about the destination and quite a bit more about the experience and all of the elements of that, and what does that look like. So a pretty big shift in how travelers are thinking about and making those destination decisions. Another related theme that we're seeing around this is the rise of what's, I think, is often referred to as the passion economy, but really it's people that have a particular passion, and they want to build or connect with a community of people of shared interest or passion. It could be something around a particular activity. It could be some type of cultural activity or art or a sporting activity or adventure, or a passion around a brand or something that is driving travel decision making. We're seeing this as well with the rise of communities. Could be Facebook groups. It could be other types of groups that are actually building travel experiences around it. There's a tour company called Dharma that is devoted to designing tours, not so much around destinations, but around particular passions, interests of travelers. And then, a third important piece too, that I like to tie in. I know we've talked about this at the beginning with some great insights on from both Focusrite and Chris at Miles on kind of the impact of kind of visual and short form video search. But I wanted to highlight here, in particular, that there's very much a relationship in just how travelers are thinking about experiences, but also being inspired to connect with potential experiences and make decisions about what they want to do and where they want to go. It's this kind of content where travelers can see themselves, connecting with the experience, with the destination. They can see themselves doing it. They can see people like them experiencing it, and it's something that they want to do. And I thought it was, pretty remarkable that we saw last week, Amazon had announced the launch of Inspire. I think it's a soft launch still in the US, a kind of TikTok style video feed for shopping within the Amazon app. I am waiting for an OTA and perhaps an experiences OTA to launch a similar type of kind of initiative to see how that might change the experience of actually shopping for travel experiences. There are already a number of startups that are going after this space, and I expect a bigger OTA or a bigger platform to delve into this as well. But I'll just close by saying, this is something that you probably heard quite a bit. It's been talked about, I think, for the better part of a decade or so. Lots of consumer research from the likes of McKinsey and Airbnb, and we've seen it from Focusrite and elsewhere, where a significant and broad consumer shift in interest and experiences over things, right? Spending more time and more money on doing things with people that matter to them, and less time buying TVs or other stuff to fill their homes. We see it specifically in our traveler research with, it's very clear, and especially with that younger traveler set. But I always struggled a bit with, okay, well, what does that actually mean for us as the industry and for travel marketers and travel companies? Like, how do we tie this into our business and our operations? And finally, kind of seeing this research, it's really kind of tying this up now for me, that increasingly destinations, accommodation providers, broadly travel sellers really need to be thinking about putting experiences first, or certainly higher up in terms of their broader marketing strategy and messaging to the travelers that they are going after. And with that, Chris, I'll hand things back to you.
Thank you, Douglas. These fascinating fundamental shifts. And in the presentation information that we'll share with you later, you will find lots of great examples from Travel Oregon that has focused on the destination management side of the tourism experiences, launching a tourism experience studio, helping destinations develop experiences of their own and the industry partners. In the other example from another coast, the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau developed a partnership with 12 diverse neighborhoods to promote arts and culture-related experiences in those locations around the city. And we also see that experiences are very heavily driving the short-term rental decisions. As Madeline was talking earlier about the importance of ambience, there's certainly no shortage of ambience in this example of Idaho located Big Potato Airbnb that certainly comes with all the great amenities that you wouldn't expect from the potato. And likewise, a talented team at Red River Gorge and Canopy Crow Treehouse Builders created this village of 7 tree houses in Kempton, Kentucky, which definitely gives you a great reason to travel beyond all the other exciting opportunities that you can find in the state of Kentucky. So we certainly see fantastic opportunities for destinations to work with their community, with the industry partners, to see what are the unique experiences that are being promoted and offered, and in some cases help develop them. So passing it to you, Chris, to close.
Yes, thank you so much. And let me thank all our speakers, Douglas from Arrival, Pete Miller and Carolina from Focusrite. Thank you so much for your input, your expertise. Just a reminder to everybody, the slides, the resources, the webinar recording, all available via email and on this landing page that we'll be updating in about 24 hours or so. And I just want to call out this whole issue that Madeline was talking about, short-term rentals. That was a major part of a huge study that we undertook with a range of agency partners across both Europe and North America. Time for Democracy: how can DMOs engage successfully with their local communities and tackle issues like short-term rentals? So we'll be releasing that major report, including the short-term rentals section, but it also looks at resident sentiment research, DEI, media and comms, workforce issues. You can register, receive the report, and participate in the webinar, the transatlantic webinar on January the 25th. So thank you so much to everybody for joining us today. I just want to call out also Focusrite and Arrival have a range of resources. Pete, in 20 seconds, anything you want to highlight here?
Sure, Chris. Yes, we've worked with destinations for many, many years. So we've created access to our full body of research, and we publish ongoing research and data on on the destination marketing space.
Okay, thank you. And I know Douglas has also got both free and paid subscription opportunities, and Arrival runs some truly impactful events. So check those out. So thank you again to all our speakers and panelists today. Thank you so much to you. Just want to highlight, have a wonderful holiday and festive season. Take a break, refresh, come back in 2023, and we look forward to engaging with you there. Have a great rest of your day.